All right, so good morning. My name is Joe Feria Galicia. I'm with the Berkeley Resource Center for Online Education. This is workshop 5, Accessible Microsoft PowerPoint. And this is actually my favorite workshop because PowerPoint is really simple. It could be robust. It could be used for a lot of different things. Some people use it for layout and printing. But it's also a platform that could easily be misused, and the amount of remediation required to fix it could be hours and hours, especially if you're going to export to Acrobat. So I'll just summarize how to make it so that when you export to Acrobat, it'll export accessibly, and the content within the PowerPoint will be available to screen reader users. So we're hosting everything in the Ally Workshop B course. The address for it is on the screen. If you're watching this, you're most likely viewing the recording from Module 5 as well. So today's goals are to enter metadata into the PowerPoint. We're going to review the outline view. Basically, everything in the outline view is going to be accessible to a screen reader. We're going to play with choosing different layouts in PowerPoint for your specific needs. Make sure that we arrange the reading order. And then also just to let you know that this particular template that we're going to be working with, the reading order has already been established. And that's one of the easiest things that you could do when you create a PowerPoint template, is to make sure that the reading order is all set so that whatever you export to Acrobat is going to be in the proper order. We're going to add alternative text to images, run the accessibility check, and then we're going to export to Adobe Acrobat. We're going to do this, and I think we're going to be pretty good on time. After we do this, then I'll kind of go to like the next step, which is working with master slides and customizing for your particular needs. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to do introductions. We're going to look at the accessibility workshop B course. We're going to do a demo, and then there's going to be lots of hands-on. And those in our audience will have special help from the Berkeley team so that we can make sure that you become experts. And most likely, we're going to be asking for some sample work at the end so that you can demonstrate what you've learned at the end of this workshop. There's going to be lots of Q&A, and then we'll figure out next steps. So we're going to jump right into the metadata. If you attended any of the previous workshops, the metadata is really important. It gets exported to Acrobat, and we focus on the properties with specifically the title, the subject, the author, and the language. The title and the language are necessary to pass some of the audits that are built into Adobe Acrobat. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the next slide because this is where we're going to find the properties at. And then I also added this slide because we're going to be looking at this PowerPoint as well and learning how to insert images. So it's kind of like a placeholder. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this PowerPoint, and I'm going to go back to the course. So the goal of this accessibility workshop course is to house all of our workshop recordings, all of our documents, all of our resources, and to track our growth. And the thing about Berkeley that I think is very wonderful is that we work on iterations. And so we're always growing, we're always what they call pivoting. In this particular realm in accessibility, things are always changing and we're always learning new techniques. So this is going to house our learning as a community. And we have it so that it's based on modules, and all of our workshops have video recordings. We have the transcripts, the PowerPoints are there. And then some of our, like on one of the first ones, we talked about the interests of the group, and we're able to track those. And then we're going to decide the future workshops in the spring based on some of this content. And there's also room for discussions in case afterwards there's some questions or new developments. So this is a wonderful resource that we could keep building on and developing. Israel mentioned that he wasn't able to make the first couple, but he did go through the videos and was able to kind of update himself on the progress. So we're on module 5 today, and what I'm hoping is that those present could go ahead and download Workshop 5 PowerPoint. So if you select that, it'll download, and you should be able to just go ahead and open it. And while you're at it, there's more resources down here. So this is where you could find and locate the Burkle PowerPoint template. This is one of the templates that we've created over the last 3 years. So go ahead and select that and download. And then there's also a sample PowerPoint. This sample PowerPoint I just added from the UC Berkeley branding website, and it has some basic content, but it's a totally different template. So I want to show you how to move from one template to the other. And that's kind of like a good, the UC Berkeley branding site is a good place to find content that's been sanctioned by the university. I haven't tested it for accessibility, but we'll be doing that live. And then the other thing that's available for you are these PowerPoint tutorials. And we've created them for Mac, 2011, 2016, and then the different flavors of the Windows. So the 2016 is what we're working on here in this particular lab. So you could go ahead and download that. And there's a step-by-step guide on what we're going to be doing today as well. The other resources that we have are some background images. And this is so that you could get a sense for how you could create your own master slides by changing the backgrounds. So there's just some other colors that we could use. So you could download those as well. The last set of resources are the accessibility icons. So there's orange, purple, and teal. And I added those more because we could use them for images so that we could add those into the PowerPoints that you're going to be constructing today. So if you don't mind downloading these, and you could just leave them in your download folder for now, except for today's PowerPoint tutorial. So the Workshop 5 PowerPoint, go ahead and open that one. And you're going to end up with this guy right here. All right, so the first thing that I want you to do, because when you're working with the template, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and file, save as, so that you're not altering the actual template itself, that's always going to be available for you. So if you do file, save as, I'll just save it on the downloads and just give it another name. I'll just call it version 2 for now. You could call it whatever you want. But after you save it, we're going to go back to the file and we're going to look at the metadata. So this was that screenshot that I started with. And we're going to go to properties. And then there's the advanced properties. So I'm going to hold there and just wait for folks to catch up. If you're at this particular screen, or if you're ready to hit the advanced properties, if you don't mind looking over here so I can make sure that we're caught up. And because this is this is the project that I'm working on, but you can see how I've named it Accessible Microsoft PowerPoint. That's today's workshop. I've given it the subject and the author. Y'all could change that right now if you want to, however you want. This in the summary tab though, the title is critical for the accessibility check. There's also the keywords down on the bottom, and I usually, that makes a lot more sense if you're in an organization that uses specific keywords, or if you're uploading this file to the web and you want those keywords to be available on search engines. The next critical section is the custom. And notice that on the properties, it says language equals English. I'm going to go ahead and delete that right now. and I'll show you how to add that yourself. So there's a scroll bar within this name category, and I'm gonna just go down to where it says language. I selected that, and then in the value, I'll go ahead and type in English. And then if you're using another language, obviously you would write that particular language in there, and that's gonna be available to the screen reader users. And then you have to remember to select the add button here. And then now it's where we started off, language, English. Now this metadata is gonna export to Acrobat, and it's also gonna allow us to pass our accessibility check before we do so. So let me hit OK, and then I'm just gonna see if everyone's with us. Any questions about that? All right, so now we could go to the back button. And I'm gonna tell you why this is an accessible PowerPoint right from the beginning. And what we wanna do is go to the view and then go to the outline. So I went to view, and then on the ribbon, there's the outline option. And the content on the PowerPoint is represented in a pretty linear fashion on the left-hand side now. And everything in here in the outline view is what gets read by the screen reader. Now, I recently went to a Microsoft workshop, and their products are getting much better in terms of accessibility. And specifically Microsoft, is it Microsoft 365, the next version? They've done leaps and bounds in terms of accessibility for that particular flavor of Microsoft Suite. And so it might be that the outline view isn't going to be as important in later versions, but for the version that we're working on right now, this outline view is pretty critical for viewing. Anything that's in here is what's going to get read. If it's not in the outline view, it doesn't get read by the screen reader. So that's why the outline view is one of the most critical views that we want to use in the PowerPoint. The other thing you notice is that there aren't any extra spaces in the outline view. So if I go to the content, so I'm looking at goals, workshop 5, and then at the very end of this bulleted list, I'm gonna hit return. And then in the outline view, there's an extra space. And so that's what's known as an empty return. And a lot of screen readers are gonna pick that empty return up, and it'll read blank. And it could be confusing to a screen reader. They might think that they're missing some content, or in the very worst, it's very verbose, or it's vocalizing more than what's needed. And that could be either annoying or confusing. So we do want to get rid of those empty returns, empty spaces. If you do want to add space before or between bullets, you could go to that section. And if you don't mind doing this with us right here, I'm going to right click at the end of choose layout for specific needs. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to go to the paragraph option. Okay, and then here I have the option for spacing. There's before and after. There's also indentation, but I'm going to go to the after, and I'm going to boost that to 24. And then I'm going to say OK. And then notice that visually, after the third bullet, choose layout for specific needs, there is a 12-point space between that and the next bullet. But if you look at the outline view, there is no space. And again, this is the better way to add spacing between content. When I'm remediating, or my team's remediating PowerPoints, we do specifically go through this outline view and we delete all of the extra spaces. And we will manually put them in using this paragraph, the right click and paragraph, so that visually we're getting the same aesthetic view, but the outline view isn't representing that. So this is the cleaner way of doing it. It's also the same in Word. If you want to add space in Word, not using the style sheet, just right click on there, choose paragraph, and insert it manually. Any questions about that? So that's like pretty huge in terms of remediating a PowerPoint, getting rid of all those extra spaces, all those empty returns. And so I think if you leave with anything from today, that like looking at the outline view, making sure you got a nice clean outline, that's great. I think actually right here on 5, there might be an extra return in here. That spacing seems a little bit much. I'm gonna hit delete. Yeah, see, there was an extra space there. So visually, we're not seeing it, but it was showing up there. The other reason why we wanna get rid of those is because when we export to Acrobat, they will show up as a P tag or a paragraph tag. All right, so let's go over, I'm gonna go back to the normal view, and I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to the template now. So I asked you to download the Berkeley PowerPoint template, and I'll go ahead and open it. And this is our gift to the university and to folks out anyone on the web could download this off the Berkeley Hub. When we were first starting to look into remediating our PowerPoints, we were actively looking for an accessible template that was freely downloadable, and I couldn't find any. And I asked around, and people tended to be very protective about sharing their PowerPoint templates because there is a lot of work that goes into designing it. A lot of hours, like literally hundreds of hours went into developing this particular one. And if you know how to use it, it's going to save you quite a bit of time in the future. So the goal of this particular PowerPoint is to allow for flexibility in content. So the first slide is just like a simple 1-line title, and then there's a subtitle, and then there's room for your professor name, department name, or presenter name. The next one has 2 lines. So sometimes the content, the name of your PowerPoint is going to be longer than just 1 line. This is how you would select this particular layout. And then we have some title slides. Again, 1 line versus 2 lines. And then this is something with body. So there's bulleted and there's some indented lists as well. And each one is styled so that the font is a little bit different and it's indented. And so it goes on. There's the 2 slides, and then here's an image slide. So this one has placeholders for, it's almost like a comparison or a bulleted list next to an image. Here, this is more of a comparison right here with 2 lines. So it's a pretty flexible template. This particular slide right here, it's kind of meant so that you could have room to insert maybe an image here. This is just for an image. Slide number 11 is really important because notice how there's a title on here. Let me go back to there. Let me reduce this a little bit. But it says offstage title. What that means is that because it's outside of this main rectangular area, it's not visual. Like, we're not going to be able to see it. Let me go to the present slide here. So it's just saying insert image here. This is where the main content is. But when we go to the outline view, and remember the outline view, I'm going to go to view, outline, slide 11. It says on their offstage title. The outline view is what the screen reader is going to have access to, but it's offstage. One of the accessibility rules is that every slide has a title. But again, we're going to want the flexibility of having just an image on there. At the same time, because we moved it off stage, it's still going to have a title. It's still going to pass the accessibility review. It's just not going to be visually visible to sighted folks, but the screen will have access to it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we need to, this is a good place for in interjecting one of the accessibility rules, is every title needs to have a unique name. It's the same with web pages. We want your web pages to have unique names so that we're not confusing folks that are using screen readers or that are visually impaired. So what we'll do is, part of our remediation is to go through, and if we see that an instructor has added, 3 slides with the same name, we'll just write, we'll leave the first one as is, and then we'll go to the next one and say part 1, or I'm sorry, part 2, and then part 3, and so on. Or sometimes we could just manually change the name if it's obvious that the content is differentiated. But in the very least, we are adding part 1, part 2 to that. And it's a lot less confusing for everybody as well when you're going to go back and refer to a slide title as very specific part 2, part 3, then everyone's going to be able to get there. Okay, another aspect of this particular slide that makes it accessible is I'm looking at slide 8, and in the outline view, there's a number 1 and a number 2 there. And what that is referring to are these text boxes, these placeholders, I should say. It's going to read first level and then the second one here in that particular order. How do I really know that? It's saying it right here in the outline view, but when I go to the home, and then there's this arrange option, and if you all could do this with me, because it's really good to get comfortable with this arrange aspect. So I went to home, and then there's arrange, and then at the very bottom it says selection pane. Okay, so I'm going to hold it there for just a second. I'm on slide 8. Okay, I think folks are with us there, and then so it's on home, and then arrange, selection pane. Okay, and what that did on the right side, it's showing this is actually the reading order. And for Microsoft PowerPoint, Windows version, the title, I'm sorry, the first reading order item is at the very bottom of the selection pane. So the title slide, and then it goes placeholder 2, and then placeholder 3. So this is going to export to Acrobat in this particular order. That's the reading order that the screen reader is going to access it. Okay, so again, so we went from looking at the title slides, now we're looking at the reading order, and this arrange tool is the easiest way to figure out how things are going to be exported. And again, we took the time of creating the PowerPoint template and making sure that it's already set for the reading order. So it's a lot less work for you, especially if you're going to be exporting to Acrobat. Any questions so far?
Would you rearrange that order? What would make you rearrange?
Yeah, is that a bad order?
No, this is a great order. That's the beauty of the PowerPoint template. We would, if we're remediating an unremediated PowerPoint, these are the things that we would go through and check for. I mean, there's two aspects here. One of them is the, if we're going to export the PowerPoint to Adobe Acrobat, which a lot of instructors prefer if it's going to be in a course, then yeah, we want to make sure that the PowerPoint is remediated so that we don't have to do too much work in Acrobat. Because as we learned from the last workshop, Acrobat is really tedious and difficult and not very intuitive. So the easier that it is in PowerPoint, the less work we're going to do in Acrobat. Yeah. So the other thing that I want to show you at this point is on the home button, there's this reset option. And look what happens when I hit reset. It goes back to the master slide view. So I could change this title. I could make it red. I could change the font to 44. I could, move it around. But then once I hit the reset button, it removes all of the styling, all of the, I'm going to call it inline styling. And it strips it out and sends it back to the styles that we're using at the master level. And by the end of the workshop, we're going to get to the master level. But again, I'm just showing you the features of this template that help make it an accessible template and just more robust for long-term maintenance of your PowerPoint files as well. Any other questions? Okay, while we're here, this is a good place for me to just show the alternative text, where we would put alternative text for images. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click on the image itself, and then there's the format picture option. And okay, so it's under this size and properties. There's the alternative text at the very bottom. I selected that, so it opened up, and there's a place for title and description. I'm gonna go ahead and just type something very basic, a list of icons. Representing, I'll just say accessibilities. We don't need to add any content in the title section, just in the description. The description is what's going to get exported to Acrobat. So I just right-clicked on the image. I could close that now. Right-click, format picture, and then there's the size and properties, and then it's under alternative text, and it saved it right there. If it's basically an image that is just what we call eye candy, there's no real meaning that is being conveyed. It's just there for visual, to make things visually nice, then you could just do quote unquote. And that's a null tag, and that should export to Acrobat. We could check it out after, but that's just representing that it's not conveying any particular meaning that's necessary for that particular slide. All right, so we actually did quite a bit here just on this template. Again, that reset feature of the template just helps us put things back the way they are and keeps things very consistent and predictable, which is also an accessibility concern. And then we talked about the offstage and just the different options in terms of the layout. Okay, any other questions about the template itself? All right, so we're making a lot of progress. So what I want to show you next is, if you go back to the course, I'm not sure if you were able to download the sample PowerPoint, but let's work off that one now. So I'm going to go ahead and open it, and I haven't tested this for accessibility, but it does have content. So if you're going to be reviewing your PowerPoints for accessibility, what's one of the first things that you're going to want to look at? Which view do you want to look at this?
Outline.
Okay, the outline view. So I need to hit enable editing, and let's do that. So we got to go to view and then outline, and let's take a look at this. How does this look? It looks pretty good. The content is
What's the second bullet goes here has a dash instead of a bullet on page 2.
Yeah, but that's okay.
All right.
A dash, you could do bullets however you want, and that could be set up in the master slide.
I see.
Let's look at this graph. I'm gonna right click. Oh, so it's not an image, it's actually a formatted graph. I don't think there's a place for us to do alternative text there. I'm not sure how that might export as multiple images in Acrobat. But look at 4, it's saying 1 for this first section, and then 3rd bullet goes here. So let's look at, I'm gonna go home. We're gonna look at the arrange and section pane. So let's just see how this is the reading order for this. So I went to home and then arrange, selection pane, and then yeah, titles at the bottom, placeholder. Oh, placeholder 2 is coming up first, and then it says placeholder 3. So if I would suggest that we go left to right for reading order. So that's something that we could easily change by just dragging that over. Now I'm doing it in this regular view, the outline view. I'm not doing it at the master slide level. If I were to truly remediate this PowerPoint, I would rather do it in the master slide, because you do it there and it's going to apply to all the other slides that are using that particular master slide. I'm going to get back to that because I saw Alicia questioning that. She wasn't sure what I'm talking about. Let's get to there. I just first let's just look at this on the outline view. It does look like there's a lot of content. The content is coming out. Here's an image on 5. So let's go to the format picture. It's mine showing up already. You could just right click, go to format picture, and then there's the alt text. And notice that the description for this, it looks like it doesn't make sense to me. It's more like the file name. So this doesn't have descriptive alternative text. If it was just eye candy, we would null it by doing quote unquote. And then the other thing that I would check as well is the color contrast on this. I'm not sure if that white on this particular shade of, is it orange reddish, or the black? I would have to use something like ColorZilla or color contrast analyzer to confirm that the colors are correct, and also the font types. But regardless, there's content here, and I know that our template is an accessible one. So we're gonna do this together. Okay, let's go to the view and go to the normal view. And what I want you to do is go ahead and select all. So it's Control A, and then we're gonna hit delete. So we're gonna start with a clean slate on this particular template.
I deleted all of them.
Yeah, delete all. We're not in the master slide, so we should be fine. And then we're gonna go to the sample template or sample PowerPoint that we downloaded. And for me, it's easier to select it when we view normal. So I'm gonna go Control A, and then I'm gonna right click, and oh, it's not letting me. All right, then I'll do Control C to copy. And then I'm gonna come back to our template and I'm gonna paste. There's 2 ways of pasting. Oh, it didn't catch it. Let's see, did anyone else have a look on that?
What do you want to?
I want to copy all of these slides. So I'm going to Control A. Let me see if I could just drag them. Oh, I dragged them over. So if you have them one over the other, you could just drag them. The copy and paste should also work. It didn't?
It did.
Oh, it did? Okay. Is anyone having any problems getting the content from the sample over to our master slide? Everyone's with us? Okay, perfect. Okay, so now what we got is content that's stripped out of, because I was telling you, I don't know if the color contrast is good on that other template. but I do know it's good on ours. So what I want to do is just start using our template. So what we're going to do is we're going to go home on the ribbon, and then it's going to give us this layout option. So I'm going to select the layout based on our master slides. Remember, the theme here is based on all of our master slides that we could consider kind of like a style sheet for that content. So that's a title. So there's a title and a cover option. So let's just see if that works. Okay. Doesn't look the best. Let me hit the reset button. You see that once I hit the reset button, did that look a little better? Let me undo that. Command Z. So this is what happened when we just applied the layout, but then now we're going to hit reset, and then it puts it into a better order. We could grab these placeholders. We can move them out of the way, hit the reset button again. So now I know that that content is being properly applied into our master slide layout. And we're getting consistency. So let me go to this next one here. So this looks like a template that we do have. So I'm gonna go to the layout, and this title and content slide would probably work pretty good for this. And then let me hit the reset. There you go. So now I'm properly formatting it. And then I'm going to sneak over to the view layout. Oh, I'm sorry, view outline. And notice how, look, the outline view actually looks pretty good for all the slides. And again, that's the content the screen reader is going to have. But it doesn't have, like slide number 3, I haven't applied a theme to this or a layout. So let's go back to the home. Go to the layout, and this one's just an image. So there is one that has a off content image. Let's see, image only. Let's do that one. And then I'm going to hit the reset button. Okay, see how again, the layout aligned where I want it to align, and then the title is off. It's off stage. So that's not going to be visible when we do the full screen. Let me go to the full screen here. The title's gone, and so the main content here is just the graph. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to go ahead and just show you once more, like if I resize this and I hit the reset button, it's going to put it back to the consistency of the master slide. And that is really huge, because what it's doing is it's the left margins and the right margins have been predetermined in the master slide, so that when you're showing images, they're all going to be aligned consistently. And again, that's going to be great for everyone. Okay, so can you go ahead, let's do a little hands-on here. There's still some more slides. Go ahead and go through it and add your particular the way you would think the layout should be based on the theme layouts that we have in our template. So this will give you a little bit of time. It'll give me some time to go around and just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page. And just remember, getting used to hitting, after you choose a layout, hit the reset button. And then this shouldn't take long. We'll do about 5 minutes. It might be a good time to take, it's going to get us to 10 o'clock, which is our halfway mark. We could do a little, a 5-minute break in case someone needs things. And then we'll regroup right after this. Okay, so this is the sample one here. And then this is the template. This is our template. So I had asked first to select all and select all and delete that, and then come here, select all, and so select all, and then you could drag it over like that.
Okay, what
Wait,
I'm
so
sorry.
where
select
did you
all of
drag
our
to?
template and completely delete it out?
So let me do it again.
Yes,
Yeah, we
And,
can delete the slides, yeah.
Delete the slides.
okay, so this is our template. This
Yeah.
is our, so at the top says Burko Blue.
Yeah, just take
So
it out.
select all and then just hit delete.
Oh, delete those.
Okay.
Okay,
Those are gone. Got it.
all right.
And copy these.
And then on the sample,
Uh-huh.
Move them over.
you could select all and then you could just drag them.
Or you can- Ah, okay. I was going the opposite way.
So I'm gonna stop there. And then,
Okay, I've done that.
okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
now, so now what you have is the content and then you go to the layouts and then you could start applying the layouts depending on how you wanna,
Right.
on
got it.
whatever one you think is best, you know? So I'm just going through. The thing that I was mentioning though is that once you do that, you have to hit the reset button and then it'll apply the master slide
That's a okay.
content.
You have to do it individually.
Yeah, you do it in, actually you could select all.
But you don't want to because,
Yeah,
well, if you hit the title slide, it applies the title slide to all of them and you don't.
yeah.
want that.
And it might be that you're always gonna be using, like I use this title and content slide often. It might be that that's gonna apply to like 90% of your slides. And then you could apply it to 90% of the slides and then just go back and do the other 20% individually. But regardless, your task for this section was to do the layouts. So now that I know that we need help, let me go through and I'm gonna go to you individually to make sure we're doing really well on time, so we're fine. Okay, so we're back from our break, and what I'm gonna do is just finish adding some layouts to this particular, I have 2 more slides left. So let me pick a couple of them. Hit the reset. I'm gonna do this one as well. This is the last one. Hit reset. All right, so we got 6 slides. I'm fairly happy with the way they look. I'm gonna go to the view layout, or I'm sorry, view outline. And just to make sure I don't have any empty returns in here. And then we need to do this together. So let's save your file. There's the icon for saving. And then what we're gonna do is go to File, and then there's Inspect Presentation. It says check for issues. So let's select that one, and then there's the check accessibility option. And Israel, you gotta do this with us as well. So we're in the check for issues, and then, yeah, check accessibility. And I wanna make sure, Alicia, you're with us?
Almost.
Almost?
I'll be right there. I'm just saving to mine.
Okay,
Missing alt text.
Oh, I
Sorry.
okay, so I went ahead and hit that, and then it's giving me some errors. So missing alt text, so that image doesn't have alt text. There's another image that doesn't have alt text, and then it's saying duplicate slide titles.
Right.
So, so this is called Georgia 42 point. The other one's called Georgia 42 point. So again, we started off by mentioning that each slide needs a unique name. This accessibility check is gonna catch that. And the way that I had recommended is we could, this actually might be kind of weird to do part 2 because it ends with 42 PT. So I'll just put continued on here. You can do whatever you want, but I am creating a unique name, and notice in the outline view, it shows up as a unique name now as well. Did anyone else have any other issues?
Where's the accessibility check? I'm lost.
Okay, so let's do that again. So I'm gonna go to File,
File, yeah.
Inspect Presentation. It says check for issues. And then it says check accessibility.
Oh, okay.
So the missing alt text, again, if you select it, you could right click. Oh no, this is that weird one. It's a plot, yeah. So there's actually multiple images in here. Let me see if I could grab, okay, that looks like the outer area. Nope, I still can't add an alt text. So this is one where I would add the alt text on the PowerPoint, I'm sorry, on the Acrobat file.
What if you change to or save as picture?
Yeah, you could save it as a picture to convert it. There it is, save as a picture. And then I would save it and then re-import it.
Oh, you have to re-import
I
it?
think
It doesn't
so.
replace it.
Or- Yeah, I don't think so. I would have to bring it back in.
That's not cool.
And then when we go to the Acrobat version, it probably might have like multiple images on there. This is another one where I could just format the picture, go to that size and properties, alt text, and then it's, I'm gonna null it because it doesn't have any real
I have a
meaning.
question. Does it make more sense to do what Scott suggested and turn it into a picture if you're likely to have to update this document in the future, you know, and you have to,
Yeah, I would.
you know, and you know, you'd have to remember to do this again and
Yeah,
again.
yeah. In fact, that was one of the reasons why we started looking into templates and master slides, because all of the background images, you notice how it didn't ask for us to tag this line here? Because these are images like this down here. Even this slide deck here title, it's not asking us for any of this content. That's because it's in the master slide and it's in the background and it's just one image. I wanted to show you first how to do the check for accessibilities. And then the next thing is working with master slides. Is everyone ready to start working with master slides?
Does that accessibility check, or there's errors and there's tips?
Yeah, tips versus errors. Okay, so there seems to be, yeah, like a hierarchy, I guess. Like the errors is going to be higher, like needs to be addressed right away. And then duplicate slides, it's like almost like a suggestion. But when we're doing it, we do create unique ones because it gets tagged by automated accessibility checkers as well. So anything public facing, we don't want any issues.
No errors or tips?
Yeah, yeah. Well, even, I'm curious how that's gonna come out on, let me not change that and see what it comes out like when we send it to Acrobat at the end, but we'll save that for right after we do the master slides. Okay, everyone ready for master slides? All right, before we do that, I'm gonna go back to the course itself and just confirm that, did everyone download the brown background images? Just make sure you have these background images downloaded. So I'm back on the course. You could just do a few of them if you want to. It's, but have some of them so that you could participate in the master slide changes. But again, this is in workshop 5 in our course under resources, and then there's brown background images. You could also download some of those icons as well. I already downloaded them. I'm not going to use this PowerPoint anymore. Let me go back to.
So we can close the Georgia or.
Yeah, you could close the sample template. Okay, so this is the one that I was working on.
Yeah.
And first of all, there is this aspect, this slide deck. Notice how I can't get to the slide deck at all. It's in the master slide and it doesn't export at all when you're sending it to Acrobat. It's not going to be accessible to a screen reader user, and it's just kind of, it's redundant. If I switch back to my Workshop 5 PowerPoint. It says accessible Microsoft PowerPoint. It's just representing today's workshop. It's repeated on all of these ones. It doesn't need to be available to a screen reader, so it's in the background. It's more like a branding issue than anything. So I want to show you how to get to that as well. So to get to the master slide, we go to View on the ribbon, and then there is a Slide Master option.
Hold on,
So View, Slide Master. If you're on a Mac, it should be similar, View, and there should be Master Slide or Slide Master. What is it for you, Jamie?
Master, slide master.
Okay, so let's do that. And then now we're kind of like, we're out of the PowerPoint presentation. The content is now gone. On the left navigation, it's actually what it's doing is it's showing us all of our master slides. So you could go through and see all of the options that we had in that layout view. This is where it's pulling from. And again, what we did is we went through each one. If I highlight the title slide, and then you could actually go back to the home button here, and it's going to tell me that we're using Century Gothic 36 for the title. And then for the bullets, this is Calibri 26 for the first level. For the second level, Calibri 24. For the third level, it's Calibri 22. And then there's the indented. So all of this was formatted using, if you highlight that and go to the paragraph, this is where it's getting the styles from for that one. So each bullet is at a different level. The bullet, we color coded the bullet itself and how it's aligned. Now we could get to where it says slide deck title. So now you could get in there and give it a name. I'm just going to call it a sample PowerPoint. All right, so I'm going to go back to the view slide master. And let me just change all of those so that it's going to be uptight. So I'm going to go to the section that says slide deck title, and I'm going to write sample PowerPoint. And I'll just do that for each of these. And there's one more here that I haven't gotten to. Sample PowerPoint, yeah. I mean, there's a couple different ways of doing it. There's the way that I did it right now is just individually. The other thing you could do is you could do it on one, and then you could copy it or cut it and then just paste it. And the cool thing is that it'll paste it at the same location that you found it at, the same coordinates. So that's another way. But now when I go back to the regular view, see that has all changed to that sample PowerPoint. And again, that's more like kind of like a branding that we've done for each of these, that and we're doing it just in the master slide, and it's getting applied to the presentation. So let me go back to view, slide master. And I want to show you, so in other than like if you want to change the font type, the font size, you go to the master and then you go to home, and then we could change it using the WYSIWYG. I mean, this isn't one that I would want to use. I would go to my accessible font types and choose from there, but this is how you would do it. You would choose from the home button in the master slides. And then just to be really obvious, I'm going to change it to a red color so that you could see that it's being applied from the master slide. The other thing, well, let me go ahead and let me go back to view normal. And then you'll see now well, not all of them, but the ones that I changed, they're now red. So that's a global way of changing it, similar to changing your style sheets. Let me go back to view. Slide master. The other thing that I want to show you is the backgrounds, the background images. So what I told you before is when we used to do master slides, all of these backgrounds, like this line up here and the bottom blue on the blue on the bottom, those were two different like rectangle boxes that we would add separately. And we weren't doing them correctly. So when we went to PowerPoint, they would export as images and we would have to either send them to the background or delete them individually, which is just a lot more work. Instead, we figured out that if we could right click and there's that format background, and we could do this together because you've already downloaded. So let's do this together. Right click on the slide, go to format background. And then here it says insert picture from, there's the file. And then we're gonna locate it, and mine are in the downloads.
Where's the insert picture?
Okay, let me cancel that.
I see insert picture.
So what I did is I right clicked, format background, and then insert picture from, go to file, and it just takes me to a chooser. And then I'm gonna choose one that's gonna kind of match that. So this has the blue on the bottom. So there's a red color instead. It's on the bottom. So I'll insert that. And now we got a master that's red.
Okay.
You could change the design completely using this. And if you look at the PNG file, it'll give you the dimensions for this particular one in the resolution. I'm not going to get too detailed about that because this is just like a basic PowerPoint. But if you want to kind of get advanced and start creating background images on PowerPoint, I'm sorry, Photoshop, or what's another graphic? Illustrator. PNG is a really nice way of saving them. But again, we just did right click, format background, choose the file, and just look for one that's going to apply to that particular style. I'm going to do that one more time to this one up on top because the blue stripe is on the very top. So I'm going to go format background, file, and choose the red color instead. And it gives me the option to apply to all, but I'm not going to. And then I'll just close this out. And next I'm going to close the master, and we're going to look at our slides. And because I changed it in the master, any master that's being used, any background layout that's being used from that master is going to change. So that's how you change your master slides. Israel has a question.
Yeah. So when you apply a layout, seems like the name is pretty important. When you open the layout option, you're going to apply a layout.
Yeah, so let me illustrate that. So I'm going to right click down here, and then these are the different layouts as well. So yeah, so here I have title cover, 2-line title cover, slide title, 2-line slide, 2-line title slide. So yes, the names are important.
So where do you change that when you're creating your master slides?
I love, see, this is why you're my favorite, participant here, because your questions are so on point. So, and it is best to ask these questions in context. So where do you change those? That's a great question. So I'm going to go to view, slide master. And then what I want to do is, let's just say I want to tweak this one just a little bit. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm gonna duplicate that layout first. So it just duplicate it, and then I'm gonna do the same thing. I right click on it, and then there's a rename layout now. So I'm gonna select that, and then I'm just gonna call this Israel. And now you can name it anything, but I'm gonna name it for you. And then so this is where also we could kind of switch things around. You know, we can make it so that it's lined up a little different. There's not going to be much rhyme and reason to this particular one, but just to show you that we could change these placeholders. Oh, and then you know what I could do too is, let me move this up a little bit more. I'm going to delete this guy here. The other thing that I want to show you is when you are creating master slides and you want to insert a new section to add content, don't do, I'm gonna go home and let's see, I'm sorry, I'm used to working from a Mac. Let me just, okay, here we go, insert. See this text box? A lot of us, when we first started using PowerPoint, we're always putting text boxes in, right? So this is here's a text box. Now, so if you want to insert content that's going to be editable in the slide views, we want to go to master and then insert a placeholder. And then it has to be this content. So I'm gonna go back to that insert. So it says text, picture, chart, table, smart. I want to do content. No matter what, I'm gonna do a content. So there's a text box option that I put up on top, and then I'm gonna put a placeholder box here, and then it's giving me all these things that I'm just gonna delete them, and I'm gonna remove that bullet as well. The only way to do that is in the home section and hit the bullet there. So it's this is, I'm gonna write just placeholder so that we could differentiate between the text box and the placeholder. Okay, so what was this layout called? I'll give you a hint. Favorite student?
Israel.
Okay, so this is the Israel one right now. So I'm gonna, let's get out of the slide master. I'm gonna close the slide master. Nothing is being used by that Israel one because I just created it. But what I'm gonna do is go to the layout now and let's see if Israel shows up. Now you see him right there? So now it shows up and the placeholder is there. The text box, see the text box? It's not giving me access to that text box. Good to know because you could still use the text box in the master slide. It's just you can't edit it in here. But it's also not going to be exported to Acrobat as anything. It's just going to be pretty much a background. But there's a difference. So now I could edit this, right? I could add content, and then if I move things around, I could hit the reset button, and it'll put it back to that particular layout. So we just edited, we duplicated a slide in the master slides, changed things around a little bit, added a placeholder. And again, you just want to consider the font types, the font colors, the background, the color contrast in the background as well. But for the most part, with the things, the skills that you've learned today, you could actually go back and start creating your own master slides and editing them and customizing them for your particular needs. So I'm going to stop there, see if there's any further questions. And then the last thing we'll do is just export some of this to Acrobat, and then we're pretty much done. So are there any questions? None?
Quick question. So you duplicated
the slide, you renamed it Israel, and then it shows up under layouts.
Okay, yeah. So the question is, I did that. Okay, I renamed a master slide. So right now I'm not in the master slide, right? I'm in more like this is where we add content. So in order to get to the master slide, we got to go to View, Slide Master, and then in this section, this is where we control the content and the layout. So yes. So I came here and I chose a slide, and then I right-clicked, and I first said duplicate it, because I don't want to get rid of that option for that slide. I just want to change it, duplicated it, and then now when I right-click, I could rename it. And on this one, I could call it Jamie, and then hit the rename, and then yeah, now we could change everything here. We could, we could change the background by going to the file, and let me just give it something really obvious. So if I change the background this dramatically, then I'm going to want to change these text boxes as well. Move things over a little bit. Anything that I save here, once I close the master slide, I could go to any of these layouts, and then now I could right-click and go to the layout, look for this new one called Jamie, and then it chose that one and hit reset, and then there it is. I just moved it around, changed the background, changed the content margins for the boxes. It's not too difficult. But yeah, we want to remember that when we're creating content areas in the master, use those placeholders. It's not going to work the same if you're adding content, text boxes. Any other questions? Okay, let's just, let's everyone do this to yours. Now let's save it. And we're going to use this Acrobat option on the very top. And then we're going to create PDF. So I'm going to wait and just make sure everyone was able to get that. Acrobat, create PDF. So it's really important to know too that this is one way of exporting to Acrobat. And what we're doing is we're using Acrobat's native exporter. Acrobat's native Adobe Acrobat exporter. Okay, so this was pretty much the only game in town until recently. So I'm gonna call this one, I'm gonna go ahead and save it in my downloads, and I'm gonna go ahead and write Acrobat on here because that's the engine that I'm using. Under the options, let me just see, convert document information. I think that's the metadata. Enable accessibility reflow and tag Adobe Acrobat. That's checked. We want to make sure that's there. Bookmarks, those are kind of nice. Multimedia, preserve slide transitions. We don't need the preserve slide transitions. And we don't want to convert speaker notes either. And it says slide range, all of them, and I'll say okay. And then I'm going to say save. Okay, so it's using the Acrobat converter, and we're now in Acrobat. I'm not going to do anything except I'm going to run an accessibility check on it. So we're now in Acrobat. If you had the great pleasure of being at the last workshop, we did go more in depth on the Adobe Acrobat and all its complexities. To view the accessibility option, we go to Tools, and we should do this together so that you can run it. Under Tools, we scroll down a little bit. There's going to be the accessibility option, and we're going to hit Add, and then now it shows up. And just to mention, we're using Adobe Acrobat DC. This should be the latest version. Now I'm going to select Accessibility. And then it's giving me this full check. So let's do the full check and start checking. And if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand right now. Okay, no questions, so I'm gonna start checking. And then it's telling me there are 3 issues up on top. So the first one says logical reading order. It says it needs to be checked manually, needs manual check. So we could do that. The title field, and the title is actually, I'm hovering over on the very top, and it says Berkel Blue template with graphic acrobat.pdf. So this is the file name right now. So I'll show you how to fix that. And then under alternative text, there's a figure that doesn't have alternative text. And that was the item that was created in PowerPoint, and it had like multiple lines. It's coming out as one figure. So I can show you how to add alternative text to that. Did everyone get a chance to run their check? Okay, so let's start fixing things here. So the logical reading order, the way that we review that is in the right side, it says reading order. I'm gonna move up, and this touch up reading order, or the Turo tool came up. And what I'm gonna do is I wanna, on the bottom right, it says show order panel. Okay, and I'm gonna stop and make sure that Jamie has that option, Alicia has that option. Tracy, you're with us, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how do I get the Turo again?
Okay, how do you get the Turo again? Okay, so I'm closing that. We're in accessibility, so on the right navigation, we have reading order. So I'm gonna select that. And then this is the Turo tool. And then I'm gonna say show order panel. And then on the left navigation, it has, this is the reading order now for each of the pages. So it's showing 1 and 2. If I go to page 2, it's showing, it's giving me visual indicators of the reading order for each page. So it's just saying to check it, to make sure that it's correct. And we pretty much, because we use an accessible PowerPoint template, the reading order should be pretty good. So this is the one, this is Israel template. So it goes 1, 2, 3, and then I added this afterwards, 4. Notice how the text box, it's not even coming up as an option. It got sent as a background, because in the master slide, we created that text box. So that's of interest. Let's go to 5. So there's the reading order. So I just successfully looked at the reading order. And next I want to go back and fix the title. The slide title was incorrect. The way that we do that is in the metadata for this. And this is another thing that's very important. So we're going to do this together. So we got to go to File, and then there's the properties. So we're in Adobe Acrobat, and even if you're on a Mac, you should be able to do this. So File, Properties, and all of the content that was in the PowerPoint got exported, the course number, the client, the subject, and the title. So this title is what we want to appear at the very top now. And the way that we do that, and it's not a default, so we have to go to that initial view and change it from show file name to show document title. I'm gonna hold it right there so everyone could see it. So we're in the metadata for Adobe Acrobat under document properties. The tab is the initial view, and then it says show, instead of file name, we're gonna go to document title. Okay, did everyone do that?
Yep.
All right, the last check that we wanna do is under advanced. And this should have exported from the PowerPoint the language. Right now it's saying English. So if we hadn't set that in the PowerPoint, you could manually set it here in Acrobat. So now I'm gonna say okay. And then the last thing that we didn't do is the alternative text. Again, because we're in the accessibility tool, the set alternative text options on here. So I checked that, and it's saying Acrobat will detect all figures in this document and display the associated alternative text. So I'm going to say okay. And let's see. Let me see what's being highlighted here, because it's telling me something's being highlighted. I'm just looking at it because see there's like a blue highlight on the very top, but then it's saying no alternative text for this chart. Under alternative text, I'm assuming that this is what it is. It's this chart. I'm just gonna write sample chart with 4 categories. This isn't the best alternative text, but just wanted to have something there. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Okay. Yeah, so the blue highlight is just off on here. I'm not sure if it's because of the way it's set, but it's for this particular figure. And the null tag is coming up as a quote unquote. It didn't really transfer over. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select decorative figure for this. And this is the way that Adobe is wanting us to fix all of those empty returns that get exported. The P tags that get exported, they also are suggesting that we use decorative figure for that now. Just learned that last week. Okay, so now that's set. I'm going to run the full check one more time and start checking. And the only thing that's showing is that it's asking to check the logical reading order and the color contrast. Everything else is all good. So this is, again, it was a lot easier because we started with that accessible PowerPoint. If you try exporting your PowerPoints that aren't in an accessible template, try running it and see how much errors come up. It's a lot of work. And so that's why it's worth using the template in the first place. One of the biggest complaints about units that are going into accessibility is that it takes too much time, and the savings that people try to anticipate aren't going to be really realized until the first step, accessible templates. Not just PowerPoint, but even if you're using Canvas, try to use an accessible Canvas template so that all of the grunt work is going to be there, and then the training will just be how do you add content properly. So that's the end of this particular workshop. I just want to see, are there any other questions that need to be addressed? This is so much easier, right? I mean, PowerPoint is actually, it's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more fun. And again, if we're using a template right from the beginning, it's just so much more seamless. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much. Standing ovation from the major crowd. All right. We're going to put this online, make it available for you. Thanks again, and looking forward to the next workshop.